sexy on Secular Sexuality.
Well, hello and welcome to Secular Sexuality. And look, we have an audience tonight. Isn't this wonderful? I am Megan Bonner, and joining me, as always, is my wonderful co-host, Christy Powell.
Howdy.
And joining us today is Brittany Leigh. Hello, Brittany.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us today.
It's wonderful. Thank you very much for having me.
And we were going to have you, and I just realized that my volume was on my computer. I'm sorry, everyone. We brought you in today, or asked you to join us, because you are a phone sex operator.
Yes, ma'am. I am a phone hoe.
Ooh, okay.
I like that so much better because I was like, PSO? What is that? You know, I was seeing that on all of your branding. We should point out to folks that they can find you on Instagram and on Twitter and Niteflirt and all of these things. There will be links to all of that stuff in the show notes. But yeah, I was like, PSO? What the hell is that?
Yep. Phone sex operator, phone hoe, phone bone. It's a living.
Get a phone bone.
Phone bone.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Well, before we get into everything that encompasses, which I'm sure I am really looking forward to this conversation because I think it would be just fascinating. I do want to bring up Community Corkboard. We will be at AACon this year. That will be next weekend, actually.
Coming right up,
It
yeah.
is. April 19th through the 21st. In Cincinnati, Ohio. So join us there. We will be having a live airing of Talk Heathen and a live airing of The Atheist Experience. Apparently we have some fans of those shows in the audience.
Yeah, one or two.
I wonder why. And let's see here. The April newsletter has been released and should be coming to you shortly if you are signed up. If you're not signed up, please sign up. It's a wonderful read and very informative, very funny, very heartwarming. It's always really great to read. So with that, let's go ahead and get back to the topic. Brittany.
Mm-hmm.
A phone hoe.
Yes.
What exactly does a phone hoe do?
A phone hoe sits at home in her sexiest lingerie and awaits her Prince Charming. And that Prince Charming calls me on one of my delightful lines, and then he and I build a fantasy together, and until we're both super satisfied.
Oh,
Wow.
right.
Okay, I'm just gonna adjust the table a little bit very quickly. I have to say, Eric might be out as the voice of Secular Sexuality. I don't know if you're available for like voiceover work or promos stuff, but
Well, phone hoe is voice acting when it comes right down to it. So, I don't know if I could.
That's a solid maybe.
That's a solid maybe.
Okay. Okay, good.
I don't know if we can afford her, Megan.
Yeah. Ooh. That is true. Eric does it for free, doesn't he?
Yeah, that's the main selling point.
Yes, there is the hoe part of phone hoe.
Oh, right.
Well, I mean, there's nothing wrong with the little hoeing.
This is true. This is true.
So, Christy, you had some questions, being, I think, the only person here at this table at this point who has not been some sort of sex worker.
I guess that is true, yeah. That being said, I think about, when we think about like the type of work you do, my mind normally typically would go to something more like camming. I don't mean to say that, video killed the radio star, but I just find it very interesting to learn that like 1-900 numbers or that phone sex still operates. And I guess I'm curious about whether there have been a lot of changes, whether this is still a big industry or whether it's, fairly niche.
Well, I think that in a lot of ways that the industry evolves for what it has. And when you look at camming, you can only do so much on cam. And there's only so many holes you can fill. There's only so many props that you have on hand. But with phone sex, the world is your oyster. Any fantasy can be done according to terms of service, of course, depending on your platform. But any kink can be done, and no matter how extreme, no matter how dangerous, because at the end of the day, it's on the other end of your phone.
You're not grounded to, the practicalities of being in a specific room or a specific space in a particular outfit. You can fantasize about anything.
Yeah, and I've done some work with smothering and with giantess, where the man wanted me to shrink him down and put him down in various places on my body, and it was a wonderful scene that we did, but it's not something that he could have really done on cam.
Yeah, I think that just to step aside from that, it's really important for folks, I think, to begin to recognize that there's a difference between the fantasies that you actually want to come true and the ones that we just sort of enjoy in our head. And this is kind of a way of tapping into that, because so often we think of the fantasy of the VW bus full of cheerleaders breaking down in front of our house, when in reality, if that ever happened, you would offer them to let them use your bathroom and your cell phone, but nothing else would really happen. You wouldn't necessarily want something else to happen. And so this is sort of a fun way of exploring those fantasies without being tied to this need to actually see it through.
It's safe, it's fun, it fulfills the niche fantasy of whatever your kink can be, and it does it in a way that you have absolute freedom to express yourself, and you have a willing participant to do it with. You're not going out and trying to, well, it's dead now, but you're not trying to go out and Craigslist it.
Yeah.
You're going and you know that this person's going to be in it with you.
Game for whatever you're up for.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that being said, I'm not seeing late night TV commercials with a 1-900 number at the bottom anymore. How are people finding you? What is the process for people to get interested in something like this?
At the end of the day, it's all about the search engine. It is people going out there and trying to find porn of what they want and finding it inadequate or unsatisfactory, because when it comes right down to it, what most people want, I think, is they want a one-on-one or more than one-on-one, but generally a one-on-one interaction to fulfill their desires and get off. And you just can't get that from porn, and so it leads you into avenues where it's more interactive. And so that does lead to camming, and it does lead to phone sex. And so it's easy to kind of find that when you're searching for your particular kinks.
Yeah, so even as we're picturing somebody, probably sitting at home alone, maybe in their bed, holding a cell phone, it's still partnered sex in a way. It's not as passive as, watching a video or something like that.
Yeah, it's all about the interaction between the person that you're with. And most of my callers can tell within just a minute or two if we are going to click. And if we do, then they keep staying on the line with me. If we don't, they go click. And I do not begrudge them that. I am not everyone's cup of tea. And but the people whose tea I am, well, it's hot tea.
So I did want to just take a moment, because this is a call-in show, to remind the audience that you can call in and have a conversation with Brittany here today.
And we won't charge you by the minute?
We will not. And the number is on your screen, but just in case, it's 512-686-0279. Any questions, comments for Brittany on this topic, or really on any topic whatsoever, give us a call. I will hand it back over to you.
Well, you mentioned that people will, not find what they're looking for and then just hang up. And I guess I'm a little bit curious about what decorum looks like, how you make people feel at ease, and what it's like to sort of start off a conversation, and what feels appropriate for somebody who's maybe new to this.
Well, on Niteflirt, it always, when it connects the caller, it says, please introduce yourself. And I always go, hi, I'm Brittany, I'm BBW CutiePie, also known as Brittany. How are you doing this evening? And after the gentleman gives me his name, because it is invariably a gentleman. It's going to be, well, how can I satisfy you tonight? How can I please you? What's your fantasy? And it's always wonderful when a person has something ready, whether they want to be dominated, whether they want to dominate me, whether they are just looking for a quick suck and fuck. You know, it's anything under the sun, and the clearer they are, the better I can be for them. And that's where it kind of runs down. If they like my voice, if they like what I'm selling, then we'll continue on. And typically at the end, after they're satisfied, you know, the best callers I like give me a thank you and then hang up. Or they may stay online and do a little pillow talk, which is unusual but nice. And that's generally how it works, is I don't get mad at them if they hang up on me, and I'm not going to hang up on anybody. It's one of those things that unless they're particularly awful, or if they're particularly forceful against the terms of service, at that point I might hang up. But in general, I'm not going to hang up on anybody. I'm going to give them and their fantasy a chance.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of an expectation that people would come with a idea in mind, you know, have a fantasy or something that they've been really wanting to roll out that you are sort of helping to populate and help them achieve.
Exactly. We as phone hoes, me and my masses behind me, me and the masses in front of me, want to do lots of things for our clients, and we're willing and able to do it. So, yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of what they are getting from, you know, paying you and going through a service like this is the opportunity to get, you know, bespoken exactly the type of porn that they want, exactly the type of interaction and experience that they're looking for.
Yeah, and the great thing about it is it's not just a one-off. So if you find that porn actress that you really, really love, you'll go searching for all of the porn that porn actress has been in. And some of it will be to your taste, some of it won't. The good thing about Phone Ho is that if you find a phone ho that you like and keep coming back to her, she'll remember you, and she'll make it better every single time because she knows you better. She'll work with you on your fantasies. She'll check on you for like, oh, was your day rough? Well, let me make it better.
So it really is relational in a lot of ways.
Oh, yeah. I have my repeat clients, and I love my repeat clients. I'm not going to name names, but they're really fun, and I enjoy them immensely.
Is there anything kind of unique about, you know, your brand or the type of people that are coming to you, or just the sorts of clients that you particularly work with?
Well, so I'm a niche just by being BBW Brittany, BBW CutiePie, rather, because there are only so many men who have embraced their inner love for BBWs. And so for those who enjoy curvaceous ladies, I'm kind of a generalist in a lot of ways. So any sort of...
Our rather vanilla viewers, BBW, of course, being big, beautiful woman.
Yep, big, beautiful woman. And... then my other line, so I've got two lines as BBW CutiePie, and we can talk about how the system works in a little bit, but basically I've got two advertisements. I've got one just as a big, beautiful woman, and who can fulfill all your fantasy, your +1 for any occasion. And then I also have a pain slut line because I am a masochist, and I am happy to torture myself over the phone for a caller's pleasure and my pleasure, and that can be rather fun. And so I do have masters who call in, one master in particular, who take me through my paces, and it's super fun for me.
So being former cam girl, I understand this, but so the audience knows, you enjoy this as well.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, why would you do it if you didn't? But
well, I suppose money is nice, but at the same time, this takes a lot of energy. And if I'm not on and 100% and really going for it, I'm not going to give a good experience to the caller. And so I want to be the best little phone hoe I can be.
So it is much more than financial. I mean, there is a sexual experience for you, even if it's, acting in a lot of other ways.
Oh, yeah. And it's one of those things where I am getting so much feedback from the callers that I get who love my body. It has just been an ego boost like you wouldn't believe. Taking the plunge and using my pictures and getting the boudoir photo shoot that I got done for it that they can see on my Instagram and see on my listing and things like that. So.
Yeah, so this is very much not just your professional life, but your sex life that's getting tied up in all of this.
I would totally agree. I would not hesitate to get off with a caller. I'll have lots of orgasms. And it's really fun to be multi-orgasmic and have callers who help me out with that.
Who ride that train. Yeah, okay.
Naturally.
So I do see that we have a call. Would you both like to take this call?
Yeah, jump
please.
on the line.
All right, let's see here. Is this Jewel?
Oh, hello, it's me.
Hi, what can we help you out with tonight?
Oh, I was looking forward to call you guys because I have a very Christian friend who claims to be an ex-gay, one of those ex-gay, ex-trans Christians. Because the first time he mentioned it, I was like, I know sexuality can be fluid. I didn't mind it at all. But as we became more intimate friends, I found out that he claims that he's ex-gay precisely because he claims to have audible conversations with God, and God supposedly told him that he would be a better person if he weren't gay.
Sort of his own personal conversion therapy.
I'm sorry?
It sounds like he's presenting to you this idea that he has gone through sort of his own conversion therapy, that he's gotten away from being gay through the loving, healing power of Christ or whoever the hell.
Oh, yeah. He's authentic in authentic Christian, the meaning that he doesn't necessarily follow a minister, a priest. He has his own I dare say furry interpretation of the Bible because we're both furries. That's why we're so close friends. But he still has this idea in his mind that he shouldn't be gay because God told him not to. And that also reminds me of something that got me very worried on the r/aromantic subreddit when a Christian aromantic person posted about some verses in the Bible that supposedly are pro-aromantic people. And okay, that was very cool. But someone before me posted questioning Christians. If the Bible was against you being aromantic, would you change your romantic orientation? And I think 3 Christians that day answered that yes, they would. They gave their different reasons. But that got me thinking that even if my parents, whom I love unconditionally, asked me not to be asexual, because that's what I am, I wouldn't be able to obey such rule. And the fact that there are people that feel like they should obey such rule, maybe not from their parents, but from their interpretation of God, that has me worried a lot about them.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't want to impose myself onto their intimate lives. So I want to be open for them if they ever want to talk about it with me. But I'd like to know if there is something else that I could do. I don't know if you guys know of any other former ex-gay that's a thing,
I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, but this particular question that you have, I can't say that I do personally know any ex-gays. I do certainly know some current gay people. I can't imagine convincing yourself. I can't imagine for lack of a better term, deluding yourself to the point of convincing yourself that you're not who you are. But Christy, this sounds more like in your wheelhouse.
Yeah, it's tricky because when we're talking about Christianity, you can somewhat divide Christians into maybe two boxes, which are largely the folks that believe that the Bible itself is the perfect inerrant word of God and that everything in it is exactly right and we should obey it exactly as it's literally presented, which falls apart really, really quickly when you start tugging at all of the threads. And then you have the folks that are kind of more loose with it, and it's about the tradition, and I believe that God loves me, and everything might not be perfectly presented or written down correctly, and then it's like you're just sort of making stuff up as you go along to see what's convenient and what fits. So in either of those situations, there are plenty of other shows on the Atheist Experience Network about how to have those conversations about when to push and when to pull back. And, there's really not a right answer. If this is a friendship that you value and a relationship that you want to hold on to, you might just have to kind of let bad logic be bad logic. But to get at the heart of what I feel like you're asking, yes, sexuality is fluid, but you know what? Even if Megan doesn't know any quote-unquote ex-gays, I know a ton of people who come into my office because they have shoved their sexuality so far down that it basically doesn't exist anymore.
It's manifesting in other ways.
Yeah, they don't stop being gay. They just stop enjoying sex to the point where they wall it off completely from their hearts and their minds and their bodies. And that is a very common experience. So I can't say what this person's story is. I can't, diagnose their orientation or their sexuality over the phone. But I would suggest that if that homosexual part of themselves is totally cut off now, it's not because it just evaporated through the love of God or the magic of whoever the hell. It really just got sort of disassociated from their personhood. Their brain couldn't handle the stress and the tension of trying to hold both the, rules and regulations of God and their own desires at the same time. And so it just sort of cut one off and built a wall between them.
Pushed it down.
Yeah, that tends to be what we see. And I mean, I have a lot of clients that wonder, am I gay? But I just can't be attached to that part of myself. And it's really sad to see. We hear stories about people who are so confident in their sexuality that they push back against conversion therapy or whatever it is, and they realize that it was never going to work for them. And so they're able to be themselves despite that external pressure. There are other folks where the therapy doesn't work. It doesn't actually change their sexuality, but it can sure as hell make it so uncomfortable as to make them deny it.
The other thing is that for my line of work, I do get callers who are either happily or even unhappily married men who want to experiment in a safe way with these desires that they may have. They want to be for lack of better terms, a good little cocksucker. And because they're doing it at the behest of a woman, they feel like it doesn't affect their sexuality. It doesn't make them any less straight, which it doesn't, because it doesn't have to. But it's a safe way for them to explore that aspect of themselves. And so if your friend is repressing these things and saying that it doesn't matter to them anymore, I'm not saying they'll end up in my wheelhouse, but I am saying that some men do. Yeah,
often, sex finds a way. If you stomp it down in one place, it sort of squishes out somewhere else. Yeah, go ahead, soak in that visual. Just enjoy that. That's free. But Jewel, I hope that kind of at least touches on, how to approach these things. I don't know that there's a question to be answered other than to just say good luck, because that sounds like a kind of a challenging relationship.
Yeah, we are radically different friends, mostly because of the way he's closed about anything sexual, but we're also very good friends because they're both furries. We both like to play Go. He's my only other nudist friend, which, as you were speaking, I remember that although we are both nudists, we neither of us has any taboo with the natural body. He's very conscious about it. He's very afraid of people seeing him naked and not interpreting in a non-sexual way. When we trade furry art, he's very worried that it's not focused on the penis, which as furry art it usually is. When we first went to a furry resort, the first thing he saw on the man that stayed with us all day long to the waterfall and the walk in the woods, the first thing he noticed was that the man had a piercing on his penis, and I didn't even see it because I always say that news people could have wings and I wouldn't have noticed. Because that's not why I'm a nudist.
Yeah.
So I noticed that he naturally focuses on those things and forces himself not to. And he doesn't have not to look at other people. He can be respectful while looking at other people or looking at furry art. So, because as I said, I'm asexual, so I have nothing wrong with someone being naive to sexual stuff. But I often think how if he has really changed what he feels about sex, and it seems like he hasn't changed since he supposedly talked to God.
Yeah, everything that you're describing, just in a very general sense, strikes me as very anxious, sort of obsessive type thinking. And that's something that is really common in folks who are oppressed or who are trying to repress parts of themselves. So, I'm not going to say that that's exactly what's going on, but everything that you're describing to me says that this is somebody whose value system, whose personal philosophies and beliefs on sex and religion are really out of step with each other and are really just sort of an awkward patchwork that he's anxiously trying to make work. And that's always going to lead to some disjointedness. So, yeah, I wish him the best. I'm glad that, he's got somebody in his life who accepts him as he is. But it sounds like a work in progress, as we all are, but definitely sounds like a struggle.
For sure. Okay. If anything interesting happens in the future, maybe I'll give you guys a call.
Yeah, no, we'd appreciate it. Shoot us an email, give us a call. We'd love to hear more. But thank you so much for calling in.
Thank you for taking my call.
Have a great night.
Yes, so Christy, if someone does want to email us, how do they do that?
sex@atheist-community.org.
Yes.
I think that everything that he's describing, I'm trying to justify, being a furry, which is not inherently sexual, but to be really made, and to be made really uncomfortable by, the focus on penises and things like that, to be a nudist, but to also carry a lot of shame about people seeing your body, to have at one point acknowledged a homosexual or same-sex desire, and then to just flip that switch. All of this, really sounds like a lot of mental gymnastics to just try and justify some pretty disparate, discordant worldviews.
Yeah. So I was thinking we could take one more call before we jump back into the conversation here.
Sounds good.
So let's go ahead and take AJ. AJ, you are on the air.
Oh, hi.
Hi. What can we help you with tonight?
I'm sorry, I'm really nervous.
No worries.
It's okay. Take your time.
Yeah, what I want to discuss with you guys is, I haven't, is a thing that I haven't actually vocalized to anyone outside of myself. So this is kind of the first, and I'm like panicking right now.
Deep breaths, it's okay.
I've heard everything, trust me.
Yeah, that's fair to say. I do this show. I work as a sex therapist. I also, have a background working at a suicide hotline and crisis prevention. And, I tell people I deal with sex and suicide all the time, so it's hard to make me blush. But I can't imagine the things that your ears have seen.
So, AJ, what's up?
Well, first I was wondering if it's okay if I maybe gave a little background so that my question kind of makes sense.
Yeah, hit us.
All right. So have you guys ever heard of the religion Jehovah's Witnesses?
Yes.
All right. Okay. So I grew up under that ideal, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And from a very young age, I'm not gonna say that I knew that I was gay because I didn't really know what it meant. But it was kind of like smaller stuff where I'd be like, hey, that guy's cute. And then I would immediately, because they teach you this, at a young age, I would immediately kind of like shut the whole thought down. And, as I was younger, it was kind of easier to do that. And as I got older, towards puberty and then out of high school, it was a lot more difficult. So now I'm out. I'm an atheist. But, that's, that portion of it's kind of besides the point. The thing is, because I was raised in that particular environment, I'm so used to shutting down I'm shutting down that side of myself. And while I have, accepted it on a surface level, and like when I'm in the company of my friends and stuff like that, then I'm fine. But it's the times when I'm alone or when I'm, sometimes I like to say, I catch myself thinking about the future, if I find a husband or something like that. Mm-hmm. And, I'll catch myself thinking that. And, and I'll shut it down and I'll immediately go into this whole self-loathing tirade in my brain about how God doesn't want that, knowing that, now I think that's all bullshit.
Right.
So I'm not sure exactly what to do with that, or if it's like something that I'm stuck with. And I'm wondering, I'm not sure how to cope because it's not many people that I can talk to around me, hence my reason for calling the show.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I would just start off by saying what you're describing, I think probably the better part, if not 90% of our audience has gone through, at some point in their lives. Really, anybody who is deconverted. And thoughts are weird. Brains are weird. You can tell your brain all day long that there is no God and that you're just being ridiculous. And, when you almost get hit on the freeway, say a little prayer. And that's just human nature because of the habits that you've developed, the things that you've reinforced over and over and over. Most forms of Christianity talk about, holding every thought captive, about, really policing your thoughts. And that is not something that you can easily train out of yourself. So everything you're experiencing is kind of par for the course, and it's pretty human, which isn't to say that it's fun or easy, but that there's nothing broken or strange about your experience. Now, that being said, what are some things that y'all have done or that you do in order to feel comfortable, to cope with these things?
Yeah, I would have to say that, and I've said before, that when you leave religion, really one of the last things to leave you is that fear and shame. And
particularly around sexual issues.
Especially around sex and sexuality. And though you know consciously that there is no God and there is no punishment waiting for you and there's nothing actually wrong with being gay or having those thoughts or having desires, it's still... you have reinforced that thought process so much for so long that it gets its grip on you and it really doesn't like to let go. one thing that I've done myself, because I have had to deal with a lot of shame and self-loathing myself, is a type of positive mental thought reinforcement. Is you can't stop yourself from having those thoughts, but what you can do is, when you recognize that you're having those thoughts, remind yourself, no, actually, okay, I've taken a moment, I've allowed myself to think this negative thing. Now I'm going to follow it up with a positive thing, and let that positive thought be the last thought that I have, rather than continuing to kind of focus on the negative. You keep following it up and build literally new pathways in your brain with new positive reinforcement.
Yeah, and people will even go so far as to like wear a rubber band on their wrist and to sort of snap it when they're trying to snap themselves out of those types of thoughts. And, whether we're talking about somebody who has struggled with an eating disorder or other forms of like fat shaming or body dysmorphia, gender dysmorphia, and these other just discomforts with ourselves and with our bodies, they're all going through something very similar to what you're describing. And so all of those same, cognitive behavioral therapy and dialectical behavioral therapy and all of these same types of treatments can be really helpful. And so while it sounds like you are, living your life and doing all right, if it becomes overwhelming, it is exactly the type of thing that you can be working with a therapist on, or that, there are different treatments and things that can be really helpful for.
And be kind to yourself. It is really, really
First and
hard
foremost.
to deal with self-loathing. I've done that, not so much in terms of my sexuality, but definitely in terms of my weight and my body image. And it's hard. It's really hard. And it's really hard to beat back the training that you've been given your whole life, either through religion or through your parents or through society. And there is nothing wrong with taking a second to step back and go, no, I am really okay with myself no matter what my first thought might be.
Yeah. And remember that you have people here telling you you're okay, your thoughts are okay, and though I know we're very far away, just the reminder that, there are people reminding you that you are good and you are okay, and those thoughts that you are having are perfectly natural and normal, and damn it, you go for it.
Yeah, thanks.
I think it's worth remembering they do tend to fade over time. There are things that we're recommending, things that might help you cope, as you said, but, usually this type of stuff does eventually slough off and fall away, even if it can take, in a lot of cases, decades or even your whole life to get completely over. It does dull a lot over time.
It's nice to hear that, the other people are dealing with it. Because, I read about that stuff, I watch, videos about it. But, a lot of times it feels like it's just, a me thing. And, it's great to know. It's great to know that it's not.
Yeah, you're really not alone. I mean, this show was founded on the back of Dr. Darrell Ray and the books that he had written really about these subjects, really about sex and shame, and about how the God virus kind of infects our brain, and it's a difficult thing to get rid of. So it's a very human experience that you're having right now, and while it sucks, it's also okay. There's nothing broken or wrong about you.
And I think going back to the thing about Darrell's books and the God virus is it's not just the idea of God, it's everything that comes with the idea of God and all of the reinforcements that go along with it.
Yeah.
So.
Right.
Well, AJ, I hope, were we able to help at all?
Yeah, a lot. It's just good to talk to somebody else about it,
Sure.
So, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. And good luck on your journey. For a lot of us, it can be a long one, but it sounds like you're on the right track.
I All right.
Have a great night.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah,
You
you're
too.
welcome.
Bye.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, I know we talk about it a lot on this show,
In a
but
lot
that's
of
because
ways-
it comes up so much.
Yeah, exactly. In a lot of ways, his question is, why do you have an hour and a half show every week? You know, I mean, on the one hand, we're very equipped to answer it. On the other hand, it's very unanswerable, and we kind of plug away at it and chip away at the edges of it each and every week, because that is the very basis of what all of this is for. It's a very, very universal, very miserable in a lot of ways experience. But the good news is that there is healing. There is a life after.
Yeah. So let's see here. If anyone else wants to give us a call, the number is 512-686-0279. If you are too shy or can't think of a topic right now, you can feel free to give us shoot us an email at sex@atheist-community.org. And those do get answered usually by Christy.
Yes, and I'm a little behind right now because I think we're going to be maybe addressing some of those emails over the air. I'm not always quick to answer, but I do always get back to people. So I want to thank everybody who does write in. And that being said, I'd love to get back to the interview, but I'm looking at the call we have on the line, and it's basically the same direction, same types of questions that I'd like to ask Brittany. So
Let's do
why don't
it.
we let Ben on
All
and
right.
let him do my job for me?
Ben, you are on the air.
Hello, secular people.
Hello.
Great show so far. I'm loving it.
Appreciate
I
that.
have a question for the ladies. For the ladies who have a super sexy profession, and this is what you do. You got the skill set. You get paid for it. You know how it goes. How has that affected your relationship with partners? Has it been a benefit? Are there some downsides? Can you
Well,
speak about your experience?
shall I take this one first? Or?
You go right ahead. I think we may have similar experiences. Go right ahead.
Well, I will say for me, sometimes when I'm dating, it's a turn on at first for the gentleman I may be going out on a date with. They're like, "Ooh, you must be so good at dirty talk," and I'm like, "Yes, I am," but. Usually I get paid for it. But no, oftentimes they think that a lot of the work that I do on the phone is all sex work or sexy sex work. And they want to watch me work. And oftentimes it's not sexy from an outside perspective because even if I would let them watch, they're only going to get half the conversation and it's not their kink, and they watch me do things and interact with someone whose kinks they might not agree with. And so it's led to some conflict in the past. I have had one relationship where my partner was not okay with me doing phone sex work, and for a while I tried to coddle that and go on hiatus, and that was no fun for me, no fun for my wallet either. But eventually that kind of ended our relationship because they just weren't comfortable with me doing sex work, and they have to be in order for me to be comfortable with them. And so it
They
has.
know you were doing it?
They knew I was doing it because I'm very upfront. I am very upfront. But for this person, I was so into him. And it wouldn't work because he just couldn't let it go. He couldn't let it go and realize that it was part of what I did, but it wasn't who I loved. And so he couldn't separate that from himself. So
Kind of like a jealousy thing?
yeah, kind of like a jealousy thing. He thought it would be cool at first, but then it turned out he was not cool with it.
And I can say that in my experience, my gentleman at the time liked it a little too much. And by that I mean, it's at the end of the day, it is still putting on a role, and it's putting on a mask, and it's not who you really are. It's also not realistic.
Did that person expect you? Did they expect you to be that person after you clocked out?
Yes. And of course, that's not how reality works. And so they expected, the the amount of time and effort, because I was a cam girl, so it was a lot about the image. So a lot of time and effort went into prepping for that. And then, as Brittany was saying, it's exhausting. It is really exhausting. And by the time you clock out, at the time I was working a 40-hour weekday job, and it was, I'd come home and then I'd get ready and I'd get all purdied up and I'd get on camera for a couple hours and then I would be done. I would just be exhausted.
Sure, part-time job.
And the expectation was that was supposed to be me the whole time. And so there was a bit of disappointment that wasn't the real me all the time. And that, I'm sorry, I don't want to get all gussied up, just to lay on the couch and do nothing. I'm not going to, put on the nails and do the hair and put on the makeup just to sit here and watch a movie with you. I'm sorry. That's not to say I wouldn't get dressed up and look nice to go out to eat or something, but the idea of being, quote unquote, on all the time is just unrealistic.
The thing about phone work is that as much as I'm enjoying the fantasy of that we're building together, at the end of the day, my fantasies for the caller are not important. And in a relationship, my fantasies are important. And so if a person expects me to cater to them 100% of the time, at that point, it's not a relationship. It's a financial relationship. And I expect to get paid.
It's a job, yeah.
Right. And I think it's really important what you just said is that's a fantasy that's important to that other person, and your own fantasies don't matter in that situation where you're getting paid. However, if you are in an actual romantic relationship with someone who is in front of you, then damn straight your wants and needs and fantasies should matter. And maybe that was part of the issue for my situation was there was the fantasy that they wanted 24/7, and my wants and needs and fantasies didn't matter.
I will admit that being a phone hoe has opened up my eyes to a lot of different things, and so I've tried stuff in my personal relationships that I wouldn't have otherwise tried. Vor coming to mind, not literal vor, but at least fantasy vor. And I'd say Google it, but you probably don't want to if you don't know what it is already. But yeah, it's one of those things where I'm more open to things in my normal romantic life now. But at the same time, it's one of those things that it's not going to be exclusively that person's fantasy all the time. So if I'm not getting that give and take, then they're out on their ass.
Yeah, the financial aspect of things, the getting paid part, is a stand-in for the reciprocity.
Yes.
And if you're not getting paid in your romantic relationships, you're expecting, maybe not tit for tat, but some level of, you go, I go, we share, we're doing this together.
So, Ben, I hope that kind of helped answer your questions.
Great. Thank you for sharing your time with me.
Of course.
Absolutely. You have a great night.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, I got to say that brings up for me about 37 different questions that I would like to ask.
What is number 15?
Yeah, I think 15 was something I heard y'all both say that kind of struck me as somewhat intuitive is I almost wonder going out on dates and getting to know somebody and being maybe in the early stages of a relationship, if you start to unpack like, hey, here's some of my quote unquote baggage, here's something that you're going to have to be comfortable with. I do sex work in these various ways. If people's responses to that are concerning in the sense that, obviously if somebody is really angry about it or upset, that's like, okay, exclusionary criteria, move on. But I also wonder if somebody is too excited about it, if that's like a big old red flag, if that's concerning at all based on y'all's experiences.
It is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very much so. If I talk about phone bone and they're like, ooh, I want to watch, I'm like, it's not that sexy watching it. This is all up in the brain and all up in the voice, and this ain't going to be your bag of tea, honey.
They're obviously having a fantasy that you know is not going to be reality.
Yeah, they expect the cam girl all the time. And,
Exactly.
And it's not what...
That's not the real person who's sitting in front of you at the other side of the table.
It's not the real person, and then phone bone, you don't typically get all prettied up either.
Right.
So,
I mean,
and
by
then-
necessity, you don't necessarily have to.
no.
Well, and then the flip side of that, I wonder if in romantic relationships or in partnered sex or, anywhere on the spectrum between, fancy dinner or hot, passionate sex, whether you sometimes have a hard time, taking off your work hat and no longer being performative and actually getting into it and enjoying it for pleasure's sake, or if you find yourself still sort of constantly thinking about where the camera is placed, so to speak, or how this comes across or how this sounds to your partner.
Oh my goodness. Yes. So one of the things that I found is if I'm coming off one of my shifts, at one of my self-imposed phone shifts, if I start talking on, say, Tinder, I'm so much more flirty and so much more sexual than I would be otherwise. And it's gotten me into trouble with the expectation that I'm ready and raring to go just as is, and I've had to kind of roll it back and tell people, this is me professionally, and it kind of bled into my personal, and I need you to take it a step back and treat me less as a sex object.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, that's human for anybody. I mean, I know that I, will have a day of seeing clients as a therapist and then, go out to have drinks with my girlfriend. And I'm like, so tell me how that made you feel, And I have a hard time just having like a human conversation. But, when we get sex mixed up into it, which already comes with so much baggage about, particularly for women, looking the right kind of way, performing the right kind of way, being attractive or desirable and all of these like very narrowly defined things. I can only imagine how much mental work that can be.
A lot. Yeah, a lot. And,
Yes.
And flipping those switches takes a lot of mental effort too. Like you were saying, if you're not careful, you have that lag time after you take the hat off. Well, it's going to be a little while before you actually, there's like a grace period, right? Where you're slowly coming down off of that personality.
Yeah.
And if you're not careful, you'll find yourself in an interesting situation. That's probably the best way I can think to put it. But yeah.
Yeah, well, I hear that. We talked a little bit, I guess, about your romantic relationships and how your work fits into all of that. But I'm curious if, your family knows anything about what you're doing on the side, or if there's ever been any, tension at a cocktail party, just what it's like interacting in the real world.
So I'm particularly close with my aunt and uncle, just because of proximity. And they know what I do, and so do my cousins. And generally, they're pretty cool with it. Basically, I told them funny stories in order to put them at ease.
Sure.
But I don't tell them everything, God knows. And I keep it pretty clean. And occasionally I'll mention it, but I more along the lines brought them into the loop so that way they would know why I have to sometimes decline things if it's on one of my regular work nights scheduled, and that kind of thing. Because I didn't want to lie to them. I'm very open with my family. It's really nice, but at the end of the day, they do get a cleaned up version of things.
Sure.
I mean, you definitely have to clean it up to present to people who are not in the thick of it.
Yeah. There's only so many cum shots and cream pies.
Oh, yeah. So for me, I stopped camming. It's been a couple years ago now, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And I only just told my mom, hey, Mom. I only just told my mom about it 6 months ago.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah.
I wonder, outside of like family and the people who, whose opinions matter, even if we don't live and die by what our parents or whoever else might think of us. I know I have the experience of just going out to a bar or whatever and meeting a stranger and telling them, yeah, I'm a sex therapist, and people get all giddy and they ask the same like 7 questions over and over. And what is that like for you? Do you ever just casually mention to an acquaintance, or do you keep that pretty like locked tight?
Nope, I tell everybody.
Yeah, all right.
I tell everybody. Everybody knows Brittany's a phone hoe. I really enjoy this work. I've been doing this work for a while. It's a great topic of conversation because, like we began at the top of the hour, most people don't know it still exists, and so it's this topic of fascination for a lot of people. Sure. They want to ask a lot of questions, and I love talking. So it's a match made in heaven. Mm-hmm. And so it's really interesting line of work. It's interesting. I've helped some people get into this line of work because of it. And then otherwise, it's just one of those things. It's a little awkward in some ways because they seem interested, and then it's just like, well, do I hand them a business card and say, call me on my sex line?
Sure.
Or are we flirting and we're going into the non-paid interaction? I'm sometimes it's very confusing.
Yeah, the difference between like flirting and marketing might be kind of a thin line sometimes.
A little.
I mean,
to the audio viewers, that was actually much better getting to see y'all's faces than any response you could have actually given me.
Yeah. I don't come out with it. And actually, at the time I was doing it, I was still fairly repressed.
Sure.
And so a whole mixed bag of, emotions and, like you were saying earlier, it gives you a bit of a boost of self-confidence. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, shame. And so it's not something that I am ashamed of and am very open about, but it's not like my leading line of, hi, nice to meet you. By the way, I used to be a sex worker.
Sure.
Because it's more active for me, it's not the line that I lead with, but when somebody asks, well, what do you do? I'm not going, typically I don't say, well, I'm just a mild-mannered office worker. Well, actually, I will say, I'm a mild-mannered office worker, but at night, my fun side gets to come out and play. I'm a phone sex operator.
See, that feels like promotional work to me. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I know I would be the goober guy at a party who's like, is she flirting with me?
I'll hand you the 900 number.
I just slide that across the table.
Have a completely
I got her digits.
white like a business card, and literally the only thing on the business card is just the number. Totally 90s.
Very 90s. I like it a lot.
Well, in any of those interactions, whether it's, again, with family or with strangers, has anybody ever, tried to take you to task, tried to judge you or tell you what you're doing is wrong or, get really down on it?
Of course. I mean, it's one of those things where being a woman who's a bitch, a babe in total control of herself.
Checks out. Yep.
Checks out, yep. Is going to be something that puts people on edge sometimes. Mm-hmm. And one of those things is that some people think that sex work in general is just a terrible thing. Mm-hmm. And that I'm having to do it because I am either exploit it or that I'm exploiting these poor men by charging them for what I'm, offering them.
Contributing to the moral decay of our society.
Oh, yeah.
Destroying families left and right.
Oh, yeah, because, a homewrecker fantasy is obviously the same as me going into these men's lives and pulling them apart. I am not, telling them to pay me. I'm just offering my services, and then they volunteer their wallets. It's so nice, and it's so thrilling, but at the same time, I'm not holding a gun to their head.
Sure. Well, I think that's an interesting question just as we talk about the industry at large, because there are a lot of predatory practices among sex work in general.
Oh, yeah.
Largely coming from, the multinationals, not from the actual employees or in many, many, many cases, contractors. But that being said, when we talk about the particular platforms that you're on, do you choose those intentionally? I mean, I know that plenty of us, I'll raise my hand, I guess, plenty of us, definitely me, have signed up for something only to, 6 months later find out that I've been charged $300 for something that I unintentionally signed up for or something along those lines. Are the billing practices and the by the minute kind of thing, does all of that feel like it's appropriately handled?
Oh,
with
definitely.
your organization?
So I love Niteflirt. They are very good to me. So shout out to them. Even if I'm not your cup of tea, they have ladies, gentlemen's, and cis ladies, gentlemen, and trans ladies who all could be your cup of tea. And I don't think they have any trans men, but I could be wrong. In any event, the fact of the matter is that I forgot the question. Sorry.
Yeah, just that you don't necessarily feel like they are ripping people off
they're not
or taking
ripping people
advantage
off.
of people.
No, so the great thing about Niteflirt is when you sign up for it, signing up is completely free. And any new sign up, you get 3 free minutes with any provider you want. At any rate. So if you find someone whose rates are $9.99 a minute, they'll still give you 3 free minutes with that person. Those are only the financial domination lines. Seriously.
Yeah. What type of price point can people largely expect?
So depending on what you're looking at, you could run anywhere from 99 cents a minute, which is on the extremely low end. But most people set their rates about $1.99 a minute, anywhere around there. So you could expect to pay $2 a minute for a person's services. It is well worth it. Again, you'll get really good, really fast at knowing who you like. A lot of people will offer audio clips. If you message someone and say, I'm really interested in your advertisement, but you don't have a voice clip, would you be willing to send me a voice clip or send me a free minute so I can see if we click? Most people are willing to do something like that as long as they're getting the sense that you're not just seeking freebies all the time. And then the nice thing is that you're not going to get charged forever. It's one of those things where for Niteflirt, you put a credit card on file and then you choose how much to put on your account, so that way you can't overspend. And then you call in, you spend the money, and then they give you a 1-minute warning when your money's about to run out. And then at the end of that minute, you get cut off and they prompt you to add more money. And if you decide not to, if it's a bucket of cold water, well, I've spent my $20, I'm done, then you're done and you move on. The other thing that a lot of phone bone operators do is they'll offer audio clips. And so you can negotiate with the operator of your choice and see if they'd be willing to make you a personalized audio clip so you can listen to that person anytime you want. So it's build your own porn, kind of. So I know I've done personalized audio clips. It's a lot of fun. So
people don't necessarily need to be afraid of getting taken advantage of or hustled on a platform like this, then. No,
it's I like Niteflirt because it cuts a good deal to the operator, to the flirt in the case of Niteflirt, as it does to the clients. And so I think I have not really heard of any clients gainsaying the fact that they're paying more than they want to.
Sure.
Because you get what you pay for.
Yeah.
And every minute that you're on the line with somebody, you're getting that person's attention. And hopefully that person's full attention. And if you're not getting that flirt's full attention, then you can take your business elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. So it's competitive in that way. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. I think that might be an intimidation factor for a lot of folks that might be interested in trying it out for the first time. So it's good to know that there is that safety net, and it's not you're not going to get ripped off by Russian hackers or whatever else. No. That the internet and all of its barely regulated wild west feel can have.
So we actually have another caller on the line.
Great.
So why don't we go ahead and hear from Mark? Mark, you are on the air.
Hello. I can barely hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, thanks.
Yep.
Hey, what's on your mind?
Well, I've got an interesting take. You guys were discussing how expectations when you meet people in person and kind of what and tell them what you've done. I have something that's a little bit of a different take on that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'm an old hustler and from the 70s, and so on apps today when I get on, if I mention anything about that, the expectations are really strange.
Yeah, walk people through what your background is, what hustling looked like for you.
Well, hustling, I guess it's called more like a rent boy or a sex worker today. But hustling back in my day in the 70s was, I was a street hustler. So right out on the street, like in Santa Monica Boulevard or Polk Street in San Francisco or in Waikiki. And so we would just hang out and get picked up and provide sex for people for, a certain amount of money.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So what happens is I was so burnt out with that. and actually, I'm one of the few of anybody that I know from that period that is still alive. So
sure.
But now what happens is if I mention anything like that on an app, then all of a sudden I become this supposedly amazing performing granddad for the young people, and it's very strange. And so, or other people that decide that because I have quote unquote talent, that's what I want to do.
Yeah, like you're experienced, and all of a sudden you have these magic hands and magic abilities.
Right, or a magic oral ability, or a huge member in clothes, or all these things. And I have actually never even been into pornography. I mean, I'm not interested in looking at it now. I mean, guys will send dick pics, and because I'm a gay man, so obviously, and that is like the biggest turnoff. And usually, what I say on my profiles is, "No dick pics, no ass pics." And that it means absolutely nothing to any of these people, and I don't know, So I have no idea. I don't. It's strange because I'd like to be like cuddle with, and finding that's like impossible. I think.
Yeah, there's this expectation that because you do have this sort of unique sexual experience that you wouldn't have like the rest of a full, well-rounded person's healthy, natural desires. That you don't want or need romance or cuddling or whatever else because once you've been a sex worker, that's who you are and that's everything. That you are all sex and sex. There's no other piece of you.
And like we were talking about before, taking, the idea of when that mask or that hat comes off, it comes off and there is a real person underneath there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I can, sure, I can do. I mean, I learned a lot, on the streets, and I mean, there's nothing new under the sun that people come up with that I have seen or decided not to do or done. So, but I don't want to So on my apps, I put no dick pics, no ass pics, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that still doesn't stop. I mean, I don't go into all this, I've been a hustler, because that is like the worst thing for me to do. But even when I say I'm not interested, that like makes people more interested. Or then if I do say or get involved with anybody on an app over a little length of time, they say, what have you done in your past? Then it goes weird that way too. So I'm kind of stuck in this weird stage.
Right, because you want to be honest and not have it eventually, one day sneak up and be like, oh yeah, by the way.
Yeah, and I think I would say whether young or old, whether gay or straight, whether male or female, anybody who has tried to date men through online dating apps for any amount of time has gotten an unwanted, unsolicited dick pic.
Oh, yeah.
That's just, I'm not defending it. I'm not applauding it. I'm just acknowledging that that's
It
a
happens.
pretty common experience. Men really like showing off their dicks.
They really, really do. Hey, Christy, what's up with that?
I don't have a great answer for you. As somebody who has an interest in penises, I'm with you. Like, I don't get it. I don't have the desire for it. I mean, there's a context in which a lovely picture of a well-lit dick is a wonderful thing. But yeah, I'm not just
From the
slinging
right
that.
angle.
Yeah, I'm not just slinging that shit around though because I don't want it.
So I'm pretty sure it still exists. So this is a little off topic, Mark. I'm sorry for your question, but there is a thing I think on Tumblr called "Critique My Dick Pic."
That's great.
And it is fantastic. And they rate everything from like a D to an A+. And if somebody sent me an A+ critique my dick pic picture, I would swoon. Because it is artistic and beautiful, and those are some quality dick pics. But otherwise, yeah, it sounds like, Mark, you're getting the D-list version of dick pics, where it's a log or it's just not
always.
Not always? Okay.
Each his own. No,
I mean, even a great dick at the wrong moment
is a thing.
the wrong dick for you. Yeah.
The virtual universe is. I could send people a plethora of amazing dick pics. It wouldn't even be my dick, but it's so. I don't understand the point.
Yeah, there's porn. Like, right? Why do we have to reinvent the wheel? If somebody wants to look at a dick, there is an entire internet full of them.
Yes, there are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't understand what the advantage to see a thing, a couple of shots of some guy's wang. I just don't see it.
Maybe
some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. I think we'll put our best scientists on it, but I don't know what kind of results we're gonna get. Men really like showing off their dick, and when we talk about some of these scandals that have broken the past couple of years with Brett Favre and others, I don't understand. I don't know why there is that desire to violate somebody's consent to send them a picture of your penis when they've specifically asked you not to. But unfortunately, that is somehow in the zeitgeist. That is somehow part of our culture and something that we have not only allowed and on the one hand sort of discouraged, but we're still fueling it by, propping up the way that we treat men and the way that we entitle men and these different things. So these are complex questions that we don't have answers for, but you're right.
Yeah.
Unwanted dick pics are a fact of life for many of us.
Unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. You take the good, you take the bad.
Do you have any? Is there any place possible to go? Now, I've thought about going to asexual sites, but I'm not asexual.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can become aroused and enjoy sex. So I don't know where to go to try to find some connection with other human people that are going to be, I don't know.
Yeah, there are dozens and dozens and dozens of dating apps, and the culture of each one is a little bit different. So, it may be worthwhile moving to something like OkCupid or something that is a little bit more, hoity-toity in some ways.
More focused
maybe.
on the romance rather than the hookup.
Yeah, but more than anything, it tends to be about sort of the image that we put out there. Whether you're intending to, not to suggest that this is by any means your fault that people are, again, violating your consent in these ways. But you may take a look at, what are you putting out there? What do your pictures look like? How is your profile written? And that may be something to tweak.
Right.
There are entire books written on the subject. A few of them I'll throw in the footnotes to this episode. But still, even with all of this so-called research, it's a messy situation. And an unfortunate reality.
What came to mind, though, is I think I'm going to start my own app. oldrentboys.com.
I like it. I would.
No.
Well, I can't join because I'm
that
not the
would be
demographic,
bad.
but I would join.
I can't imagine that URL is still available.
Old guys with a lot of. I have to come up with the right name. That's it.
Yeah, I imagine you're not the first person to have that idea. I can only wonder at what our audience might know about what's out there. I'd be very curious to jump into the chat
Check
and see
the
what
chat
sorts
in
of
the
things people are
comments.
throwing around. But
I'm in the chat, so I'll watch it. Anybody has an idea, call in. Let us all know, please.
Well, Mark, thank you so
All right.
much for your call. That definitely gives us
thank you all.
a bit to chew on.
Oh, yeah, of
Thank-
course.
thank you
Thanks
for that.
Megan
welcome.
and Christy. We'll talk to you guys soon, I hope.
absolutely, you have a great night.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So, I mean,
I want to be in this business because the great thing about the I'm just jumping in without a question. Don't care.
Yeah, no,
moving
let's
on.
hear it. Yeah.
I intend to be in the phone bone game for as long as I can, for as long as I want to be, until I burn out or until I become wildly successful and have a bunch of rent boys at my beck and call. But I just intend to just change my image as I go along until I'm a MILF or a GILF and I'm just a grandma you want to fuck, and it'll be this great thing. So as long as my voice keeps going, I'll keep going. And so just until I'm his demographic.
Well, this definitely sounds like, as we said earlier, it's not just a paycheck, that this is like an active, hobby, semi-professional hobby, however we want to term that, but it's a genuine part of your sex life and your identity and your, enjoyment.
Yeah, and there are, so just so I'm clear, there are absolutely phone sex operators who do this for a living. I do it as a side hustle, but a great resource if any of your listeners are interested in getting into it from the phone sex operator side of it is Amber Lee Rothfield's How I Made $10,000 a Month as a Phone Sex Operator. It lays out everything beautifully. She's got a wonderful website with a lot of free information. Who's the name of the website I can't think of. It's like amberleerothfield.com, I think. Something along those lines. If you Google her, you'll find her. The book's on Amazon. And it lays out everything chapter by chapter on how to get into the phone sex industry, either as an independent contractor, which is what I am, or as a in the company model where you go and work for a company. And even if you're working at a company who gives you clients, you're still probably going to be a contractor. It's not a gig where you get health and benefits. But I mean, everything from marketing to search engine optimization to just getting your website set up. She is your girl, or she is your lady, and her phone bone is legendary.
Well, I'll definitely make sure to link that book in the footnotes for the episode. But I'm curious, why have you never wanted to take this full time? Is it something that you could make that kind of money at? Is it something that you wouldn't necessarily enjoy doing full time the way that other people might? What's your relationship with it in that sense?
So I don't typically talk. I never talk to my client side, so this is a little bit inside baseball.
Sure.
But the most I've ever made in a month, part time from Phonebone, I was spending almost every free moment I could manning my phones, and I made about $3,000. That's pre-taxes. So I still have to pay taxes on that. Still have to set aside about 25%
without any kind of benefits.
Without any kind of benefits
yeah.
or anything like that. So for part-time work, I pulled in almost $3,000 in a month.
That was hustling.
That was hustling. That was super, super hustling. At my peak before I went on some hiatus, I was pulling in about $1.5 a month. Still hustling, just not nearly as much. But I like my little mild, meek-mannered daily job that gives me health insurance benefits and has a 401k and is stable. It's not the greatest job out there, but I enjoy it, and I've been doing it for a while. And this Phonebone is fun and exciting, and I probably could make a living out of it if I had to, but having to deal with all the extra things like setting aside for retirement and setting aside for health insurance, those are levels of complexity that I'm happy not to have to deal with in my life.
Yeah, well, I have worked in a call center where I had a schedule and I had pretty great benefits and I had vacation time and all of these sorts of things. Why is it that, for phone sex operators, for cameras, for the vast majority of sex workers, honestly, even performers and models and actresses and these sorts of things, people are almost exclusively outside contractors? Is that something that you see as a problem for the industry? Do you feel like yourself or maybe others are sometimes taken advantage of in these situations?
Sorry, dead air, because I'm just like, that was something I hadn't really considered. But in some ways, yes. I mean, the thing is that at the end of the day, on paper, what I do is I do voice acting. Sure. And so just like any other voice actress there, and just any other actor out there, there's not really I don't know of many places where you're salaried. You're salaried, and you have vacation time, and you have this, and you have that, health insurance especially. And so in that case, it's kind of exploitive. But part of me is just like, let me get on a soapbox about universal health care.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is that there is no ethical consumption under late capitalism, and there unfortunately isn't a lot of great resources for a lot of workers, not just sex workers, but workers in general.
And so you see it maybe as being like part of the creative field. So, we talk about voice acting and, musicians and artists and these types of folks as well are also not getting what we think of as traditional 9-to-5 and benefits and things like that.
Exactly. And because it is extremely creative work to do, it's both extremely customer service oriented and extremely creative, which, is why sometimes I get burnt out on it. And none of those jobs in that particular field, either customer service or the creative field, typically have those kinds of benefits. And unfortunately, it is very it's exploitative, not specifically because it's sex work, but because work in general, especially in the U.S., tends to be
exploitative.
Exploitative. Words, I can totally say them.
Well, I definitely hear that. And I wonder, as we talk about it being creative and, you've talked about sort of what it means to you. It makes sense to me. I dated a really talented oil and canvas artist who, has sold a lot of her paintings and enjoys that, but would never be happy working in a studio all day because then it becomes sort of a grind, right? When you are having to perform creatively the same way that you're having to like wake up every morning and go to work and, you know, clock in and all of that sort of 9 to 5 type stuff. Could you see yourself? Would it be draining to do it in a full-time way?
I think I would have to be very careful about it. When I first got started, I had to be very careful about just getting my boundaries in good order for it, and saying no when I should say no, and saying enthusiastically yes whenever I could. And yeah, if I had to do this every day, all day, and try to make ends meet using exclusively phone bone, I think that I would be way more stressed out. It would be much harder to be on and happy with it like I am now.
All right. Well, any kind of last thoughts or anything else that, you know, maybe folks out there don't know or probably should?
They don't know how wonderful and sexy I am, and they should call me
and
at
they
their
can find
earliest
out.
opportunity. And if they message me on Niteflirt saying that they saw me on the show, well, I'll just have to give them a little free time.
Hey, special bonus offer.
Special bonus offer.
With that, I think that is a perfect place to end the show. So, Christy, would you like to take us out?
Yeah, you know, I just want to thank everybody for joining us. You know, of course, I want to remind you to, you know, check us out. The ACA is on Facebook, and we're on Discord, and we've got the newsletter coming out. So there are all these different ways to get involved with us. I, of course, am at Valence Counseling on Instagram and online. Brittany is going to be BBW CutiePie, PSO on Twitter and Instagram. And we'll have links to all of that stuff. So,
and I'm just here.
Well, and you can, of course, shoot Megan an email, sex@atheist-community.org.
Yep.
And keep the conversation going. In the meantime, thank you all so much for joining us. And, you know, I guess whether it's by yourself or on the phone, whether it's with a giantess or a rent boy, or whatever else, with an unsolicited dick pic or a, you know, A+,
unsolicited
well-curated ass pic. Yeah. We just want to encourage everybody to give themselves a big old orgasm. Or better yet, give somebody else one.
Bye.